Hello everyone. Today I'd like to introduce you to the latest science fiction film, The Midnight Sky. The film is adapted from the novel Good Morning, Midnight. Because the Earth was shrouded in unknown poison gas, it was no longer the place for humans to live on. Humans were ready to evacuate the Earth. Augustin was a scientist in charge of scientific research in the Arctic. At the age of 70, he lived alone in the Arctic. Because he was terminally ill, he decided not to follow the people to evacuate, staying alone at the scientific research station in the Arctic. So he seemed to be the last person alive on Earth. Augustin needed to take small pills every day. He had to do his own medication to remain his life. One day, after finishing dialysis and taking medicine, he sat in front of the computer and checked the spaceship's activities. He found a spacecraft active and learned that there were 5 astronauts on the spacecraft Ether. It turned out that when the Ether was exploring the outer sky, they found that Jupiter had an environment suitable for humans. They were returning to the Earth to tell people the good news. But they didn't know that the Earth was completely shrouded in poison gas. As the only human left on the Earth, Augustin must find a way to get in touch with the Ether, informing the situation and preventing them from returning to the Earth. The astronauts on the Ether also found there was a problem when they tried to contact the Earth. Since they didn't know what caused it, they could only wait for someone to respond. One day, Augustin was preparing dinner. He found a bowl of rice on the table. Augustin was stunned, but he didn't think much of it. He was old and had poor memory. He must have dinner already. So he mixed 2 bowls together. At night, the alarm went off. There was a fire in the kitchen. Augustin put out the fire quickly. He sat on the ground nervously. But he found a little girl in the corner. Augustin thought the little girl had been left behind, not following her parents to space. Augustin quickly contacted the people who left the Earth. He hoped someone would come back and take her with them. Despite all efforts, there was no signal response. The little girl sat aside. When Augustin asked her name, the little girl didn't say anything. It turned out that the little girl was mute. Augustin felt that he couldn't take care of the little girl because he didn't know how long he could live. After that, he prepared food for the little girl. Through her painting, he learned that the little girl's name was Iris. Augustin got on well with Iris. He also fooled around with Iris at dinner. At this time, the system indicated that Ether had entered the contact range of space. Augustin quickly opened the device and called them, but there was still no response. Augustin thought it was because of the antenna. He must find another antenna to send signals. Augustin went out at night to check the situation outside. He found a lot of struggling birds on the ground. He knew they were covered with poison gas, so he hurried back to the base and closed the door. Augustin found a weather station surrounded by mountains. The air must be clean. The signal tower there must be stronger. Augustin prepared his equipment, taking Iris along and getting ready to go. They must inform the situation before Ether returned. On the other side, the astronauts on the Ether could only use the virtual environments to relieve mental stress every day. The alarm went off suddenly, indicating that the spacecraft was yawing. The crew hurried back to their posts to solve the problem. They could only reroute, getting them to an unknown space area. Augustin found a crashed plane on his way here. A pack of wolves surrounded it. A shot scared the wolves away. He went in and found a man alive, but he had been eroded by poison gas. Augustin struggled to help him get out of the plane. To avoid the snowstorm, Augustin and Iris found a shelter, but they didn't stay for long until the ice was about to crack. The door was stuck and couldn't open. There was no way out. Augustin quickly broke the glass, rescuing Iris first. Then he went back and saved the man. He got ready to drive a snowmobile, but he found that it couldn't start and skidded. Eventually, the snowmobile and the 3 of them fell into the water. Augustin wanted to save the man, but there was nothing he could do. Finally, he returned to the surface. The 2 of them could only go on foot. On the way, nothing could be seen in the snowstorm. They were surrounded by wolves. Augustin shot and scared the wolf away. But he had lost Iris. Augustin shouted out her name. Finally, he fell to the ground. Then the film ended. No, of course not. When the snowstorm faded away and the sun came out, he found Iris by his side. They successfully reached their destination. His efforts were paid off. He successfully contacted the Ether. When he was about to tell him the truth about the Earth, there was an accident on the spacecraft. It collided with the planetary belt. Augustin lost contact with the Ether. The spacecraft was badly damaged after passing through the planetary belt. The main radar was also damaged, causing serious damage to the communication system. The crew could only repair the communication system. 3 astronauts were going out for maintenance. They did it while listening to music, trying to relax. The repair was almost finished. But then suddenly there was an asteroid belt coming their way. The 3 astronauts hurried to the back of the spacecraft. Just when they thought they had avoided a disaster, when preparing to return to the cabin, Maya found herself bleeding. She was stabbed in the back. The crew quickly pulled her back to the pressure chamber. But the pressure chamber time was counting down. The moment the pressure chamber closed, her blood gushed out. Eventually, she passed away because of blood loss. The crew fell into grief. After a long flight, they got closer and closer to the Earth. They saw that the Earth was no longer blue. They got back in touch with Augustin. Augustin told the truth and told them not to return to Earth. But Mitchell, the captain, still decided to return to the Earth. Because it was their home, they had to take the deceased member, Maya, and the spacecraft home together. Sully was pregnant. Captain Mitchell and Sully decided to stay on the spacecraft. Sully told Augustine their decision. Before the Connect lost, Sully talked with Augustine. Actually, Sully was Iris. The little girl named Iris beside him was just a hallucination. Sully was his daughter. In the past, Augustine made a mistake. He abandoned his family because of his career. But Sully didn't know. She talked with Augustine until the signal was gradually lost. Sully and Captain Mitchell set the return to Jupiter. Augustine guided the spacecraft before he died, helping them complete the task. The last moment of his life, he recalled the painful past, regretting his persistence. The Midnight Sky is a science fiction film presenting a depressing and hopeless future. The plot is a little messy. The cliché plot becomes the failure of the film. I don't think it's as wonderful as The Wandering Earth. The plot is far from perfect. But for those who like space movies, it's still worth watching. Loneliness is not terrible. The terrible thing is to give up everything because of loneliness. In life, a person might sometimes feel very lonely. Perhaps it is because of loneliness that we have persistence. What will you achieve in the end? It's all for today. If you like movies, you might follow me. I'll see you next time.